The special session lasted all of 3 minutes today. It will really pick back up on January 4th when the regular session does. But we did get something in writing today from the governor's office with more details on how he wants to go about penalizing the oil companies. The results for the governor's race, they were called within minutes of the polls closing. But I've got to tell you, when the notifications went off on everyone's phone, I mean, there wasn't really a moment of gasp or uniform cheer in the room, because I think for the most part, everyone here expected those results. Now, it's not to say that his team and his party is not very happy about those results, but it's what every poll said leading up to this election. And it's one of the reasons why the governor has spent a lot of his time leading up to this election comparing himself to Republican national leaders like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis or Texas Greg Abbott. This recall attempt started before COVID, listing issues of crime, homelessness, taxes, you name it. But it wasn't until the infamous November 6th dinner with Governor Gavin Newsom that this recall, and you can tell by the line behind me, took off.
Luke and Alicia, I'm doing this little dance right now to help keep the Florida blood in me warm. You're right, it is dark, it is cold, and the snow is relentless. It's coming down hard. You can see it's creating just a white blanket over the roadway. Look at that car right there, just covered in the snow. I've been telling you that people have been walking in and out of the Capitol, so I want to walk in live on TV to show you exactly how this process works. There is a lot of security that you have to go through, so we're gonna have to put the camera down for just a second as we walk in and go through. But you know, I don't want to say they are, but I'm assuming they're going to let us through. Hi.
We can't have you recording in the building. Like
in security, okay.
Once you're past security, you can record.
But we can go through right now. The building is open?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, so you heard that.
President Biden's visit coming at the 11th hour. By this point, an expert told me that people already know who they're going to vote for. It's still going on. You can see some of it on that monitor there. I heard of at least 12 different recommendations they believe the state and federal government needs to take in order to address the monkeypox outbreak. It's a strategy we're seeing in several other races as well. Lift up the most conservative candidate so that when they make it through the primary, they're easier to compare to the incumbent come November. Vice President Kamala Harris was supposed to come last week before the crisis in Afghanistan diverted her, but this event comes after a weekend full of other big names.
And Chris, honestly, we were in this area for a completely different story, which is why we're filming this off of a phone. You can probably hear yourself talking on my phone. I don't have the proper equipment, but we were just driving down the road and my cameraman looks over and he goes, "I think that's a fire." So we pulled over, I called 911. Within a few minutes, we had one unit here. They saw how big it was, and then 10 more units came. These trees, this one crushed this truck you see right here, and then look what it did to the deck right over there. It took it down. The visibility on the roads is not the greatest. You can see it's still snowing hard right now. It's thick on the ground. It's not melting. So we'll keep you updated. We'll let you know if I-80 opens back up. But for now, Alicia and Luke, I'm going to send it back to you in that nice, warm studio.
Governor Gavin Newsom is calling for a special session so that the state legislature can impose a tax on oil companies.
Well, that announcement comes after our political reporter Morgan Rynor asked the governor why 4 energy experts that she spoke with said the high costs we are seeing right now are because of state policies. She joins us now with what we know about this special session, Morgan.
First, it's in December when the legislature is already supposed to be coming back from break. Newsom said the delay is to make sure that they do this right and to get all of their ducks in a row. On Tuesday, I asked energy expert after energy expert why California prices are so high. I told Governor Gavin Newsom what their response was. Environmental policies make it hard to supplement California's special blend of gas when a refinery closes for maintenance.
Well, they don't know what the hell they're talking about if that's their assessment. I mean, you can add up all the environmental related costs. In California, it doesn't equate to the $250 that they're gouging us on.
So he has a plan to address it.
We're calling for a windfall profits tax, and I'm calling for a special session on December 5th. And it's time to get serious. I'm sick of this.
A windfall profits tax will tax the oil companies when they make over a certain amount of profit and hand that money back to the consumer in some way.
I offered you 5 or 6 different versions. There are many different ways of doing this.
Why December 5th?
And we'll take advantage in the next few weeks to work that through with our legal teams, our respective staffs, It's never been done at the state level, so this is a novel strategy and approach. We mean business. This will give us the time to do it.
Ballots start going out for the election on Monday. You're talking about holding a special session after the election. Ballots start going out on Monday. Polls are saying you're safe, but do you feel safe?
I take nothing ever for granted. This is not a performative effort, this.
In the meantime, Newsom points to calling for the state to switch to its winter blend of gas earlier than usual.
So that's already paying dividends. And that was a tool in our toolkit that we think can offset minimum of 25 cents. We want to see it get closer to 40 over the next month or so.
Another reporter asked Newsom, why even announce this if you don't have details for a plan yet? He said that he was reacting in the moment to the record-breaking gas prices, but that his team is now working on details to hand to the legislature. Prop 57 lightened sentences for non-violent felonies, but the proposition did not specify which felonies would be deemed non-violent. Instead, it only listed 23 kinds of crimes that are considered violent. Now, critics at the time said this would lead to early releases and still argue today that they were right. Now, I want to warn you that the story you are about to hear from a survivor is very hard to listen to. This is Odessa Des Perkins at 4 years old. She's smiling even though her family gave her nothing to smile about.
I started being touched between 4 and 6, 4 and 7, which is a sort of form of grooming because anyone who's going to do anything like that to you is not going to straight out start doing what they're gonna do.
This is Des, around 7 years old.
I was actually penetrated when I was about 7 years old, and then that just went on forever.
13.
I started being trafficked around high school, about 13 years old, maybe somewhere around in there. I was actually trafficked by my mother.
Her mother.
She would have me take showers. We would put on perfume and different things like that. Then she would walk me down the street from where we live and have the drug dealers and different things like that pick me up. They would take me to hotels and do whatever it is they wanted me to do.
And that wasn't all.
My uncle molested me multiple times, and my grandfather molested me, and then a bunch of strange men.
Doubting her value in this world, Des ended up in several abusive relationships.
I was with my children's father, and he used to take my welfare check, and one time I just refused to give it to him. And so I ran into the bathroom, and he busted the bathroom door open, and I'm standing by the door, and he hit me so hard that I flew back into the bathtub, and just that one hit blacked both my eyes, busted my nose and my lip.
Des knew she wanted to help other young kids avoid her fate.
I became an at-risk counselor because when I was growing up, no one asked me what was wrong.
And wanted to make change.
We went to the state capitol to try to turn human trafficking into a violent and serious crime because it's a misdemeanor. And to me, I sat down with all these different senators.
She teamed up with Republican Senator Shannon Grove and other bipartisan lawmakers to change the definition.
We had several Democrat co-authors, but the individuals, the Democrat senators on the Public Safety Committee, would not allow it to leave that committee.
What's the impact if something is not considered a violent felony?
Currently in California, it is not considered a violent felony to be convicted of domestic violence, of inflicting a traumatic condition on an intimate partner, unless you inflict great bodily injury or use a weapon. That could elevate the crime to a strike.
Assistant Chief Deputy District Attorney Don Blade said strangulation, for example, is not considered great bodily injury. She oversees the Sex Crimes and Family Violence Bureau.
The act of really physically trying to take the breath or the life away of a victim shows a certain kind of mentality of the abuser, and it's usually a predictor of whether that person is going to potentially commit deadly violence against their victim.
As a prosecutor, she says her hands are tied.
So you're going to get many more credits, 50% credits on your sentence when you are convicted of domestic violence, because it's not considered a violent felony. So the sentencing range for a general domestic violence charge, Penal Code Section 273.5, is a 2-year, 3-year, or 4-year in prison sentence. So that means at most you could be serving, if convicted of simply that crime, half of that 4-year.
She says more often than not, the perpetrator is right back in jail.
They're coming in for the second, third time with multiple domestic violence history of convictions.
Director of My Sister's House, a domestic violence shelter, Yen Marshall, says this puts domestic violence survivors' lives at risk.
This definitely needs to change because that even the second time might be too late already. By the first offense, she might have already been so badly hurt or been killed by then.
If someone can hurt the person who loves them the most?
The reality is we actually have had a domestic violence death every month since December here in Sacramento.
Outgoing director of My Sister's House, Nilda Valmores, believes these offenders are capable of a lot more.
Oftentimes, mass shooters have some history of domestic violence in their background.
She points to the recent mass shooting in Sacramento, the church shooting where David Fidel Mora Rojas killed his 3 daughters on a supervised visit despite having an approved restraining order against him for domestic violence. And the K Street shooting, where multiple suspects have a criminal history of attacking their girlfriends and were let out of prison early. Alex, what Nilda Valmores just said plays into a larger stat. Over 50% of mass shootings in America over the last decade involved someone who has a history of domestic violence or a domestic partner was involved in the mass shooting. Now, Des and the senator told me that they are not going to give up. They're going to do everything they can to continue trying to push this bill through. Over the next 2 weeks, you'll hear a lot of politicians talk about fentanyl and the impact it has on society. Mike Wood is living that harsh reality and has a strong message for them. Mike Wood doesn't want to be sitting in his office talking to me.
We're here today because of the tragic death of my daughter.
He's here for 22-year-old Tori.
I love you, little bear, and I'll miss you forever. You're half my heart.
3 weeks ago, he got the phone call every parent dreads.
She had an overdose on 10/2.
Doctors pronounced Tori brain dead 3 days later.
I don't know that she even knew she was taking fentanyl.
What Wood does know, he wants the person that sold his baby girl the drugs to be held responsible.
I just want them to take me seriously, take my daughter's death seriously, and do something about it. Even if the investigation leads to no conviction, at least I know they tried.
I've confirmed what Wood told me. Roseville PD does not have an open investigation. They said the sheriff's department is responsible. The sheriff's office told us they're only involved as a coroner in this case.
To me, it seems very simple. You take the evidence, you test it, you check the phone.
Wood is sitting with a bag of drugs and his daughter's phone, hoping the police use it to investigate. Once that does happen, he wants a murder charge.
It's a no-brainer. I don't understand why there's such a hiccup as far as getting prosecutions.
The Placer County District Attorney explained why getting a murder charge for fentanyl is so uncommon.
We have to ask ourselves, what does the dealer know about what they're selling? Are they selling something they know might kill somebody?
There was a bill in the legislature known as Alexandria's Law that would have required a person arrested for drug dealing be notified of the risks associated with the drugs. That way, if someone dies in the future, it's easier to charge them with voluntary manslaughter or murder.
It's a very big problem, and I wish there was an easy answer to fix it. Only thing I could think of is, obviously more law enforcement, stricter policies against it, like Alexandria's Law.
That bill did not make it through the committees. Nathan Hochman, who's running for Attorney General, vowed to help make that law in California if he is elected.
You know, Morgan, drug-related deaths have increased dramatically during the pandemic. According to the CDC, 10,000 Californians died from drug overdoses in just the last year. So what are politicians saying about fentanyl ahead of the election?
Attorney General Rob Bonta created a task force and announced a few weeks ago that they seized millions of pills of fentanyl and they will prosecute the person based on the case. The senator who was running against Newsom to be governor said on day one he would make fentanyl a state of emergency.